You can prepare for many things in life, but you can never truly prepare for the moment your dignity is stripped from you, layer by layer, in a brightly lit, windowless room. My name is Adanna Okoro, and I am a senior diplomat with the United Nations. But for 3 hours at the Heathrow Airport border control, I was nobody. I was just another black woman being put in her place. It was supposed to be a simple layover, a 12-hour stop in London before catching my connecting flight to Geneva, where I was due to present a crucial report on the very topic of racial bias in international systems. The irony, as I would later learn, was so thick you could taste it. I approached the border counter with the calm efficiency of a seasoned traveler. I handed my blue Nigerian passport to the officer. He was a man in his late 40s, with a pinched face and a demeanor that suggested a deep, personal disappointment with the world. His name tag read, Officer Davis. He took the passport, flicked through it, his eyes barely registering my face. Then came the first question, the tone already setting the stage. And what is the purpose of your visit to the UK, Ms. Okoro? I'm in transit to Geneva. I said, my voice even. My connecting flight is at 10 p.m. He hummed, a non-committal sound. And where will you be staying during your layover? I won't be leaving the airport. I have a lounge pass. He clicked his tongue, tapping my passport on the scanner. It beeped a red, negative sound. He tried again. Another red beep. A technical glitch. A simple, everyday occurrence in the age of global travel. But in the hand of a man like Officer Davis, a glitch becomes a weapon. His eyes, for the first time, met mine. They were not the eyes of someone troubleshooting a problem. They were the eyes of a hunter who has just spotted a flaw in his prey's armor. This passport, he said, holding it up as if it were a contaminated item. The chip seems to be malfunctioning. It's raising a flag. That's a common issue, I replied, keeping my composure. You can manually verify my details. My diplomatic credentials are in my carry-on. He ignored me. Where did you acquire this passport? I acquired it, I said, my voice gaining a slight edge from a Nigerian immigration service in Abuja. It is a legitimate diplomatic passport. He smirked, a small, ugly twitch of his lips. We'll see about that. We get a lot of diplomatic passports through here. Step to the side, please. Secondary screening. The words landed like a physical blow. Secondary screening. The waiting area. The plastic chairs. The eyes of other travelers. A mix of pity and relief that wasn't them. I was led into a stark, white room that smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. They took my bag, my phone, my wallet. They treated my belongings, and by extension me, as potential evidence. For an hour I sat. I watched Officer Davis and a female colleague, Officer Miller, go through my life. They unzipped my meticulously packed carry-on. They handled my silk blouses, my toiletries, my personal documents with a casual, invasive indifference. Quite the wardrobe for a diplomat, Officer Miller remarked, holding up a designer dress I'd bought for the Geneva presentation. I said nothing. My heart was a drum against my ribs, a frantic, scared rhythm. The professional, articulate woman I was had been locked away, replaced by a simmering cauldron of humiliation and rage. Finally, Officer Davis approached me, holding my UN identification card, which he found in a sealed compartment of my bag. This, he said, waving it, a very convincing forgery. The laminate is a bit off, though. We see this all the time. People will try anything to gain entry. I felt the ground fall away from beneath me. That is not a forgery. You can call the UN mission in Geneva. The number is on the back. My identity can be verified in seconds. Or, he said, leaning in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, you've just given me the number to your accomplice. How long have you been running this scam? Who are you meeting in London? The accusation was so absurd, so blatantly rooted in a narrative he had already written for me, that I was rendered speechless. He saw a well-dressed black woman with a suspicious passport and a fake ID, and his prejudice filled in the rest of the story. I was a criminal, a fraud, a threat. He left me again, stewing in injustice. I closed my eyes, trying to recall the breathing exercises my mother taught me. I thought of my grandfather, who had fought for our country's independence. He had faced down colonial powers, and here I was, being infantilized by a petty bureaucrat with a badge. Another hour passed. The panic began to harden into a cold, clear resolve. I was not going to cry. I was not going to beg. I would outlast him with the very dignity he was trying to steal. The door opened. Officer Davis entered, looking less confident now. The performance was becoming tedious, even for him. "Look, Ms. Okoro, or whatever your name is," he began, a new tactic of false weariness in his voice. "We can do this the hard way, or you can make it easy. Just admit you were trying to enter the UK illegally, and we can process you for the next flight back to Lagos. It will be simpler for everyone." That was the final straw. The erasure of my identity was one thing. The suggestion that I would confess to a crime I didn't commit was another. I stood up. My 5'7" frame seemed to fill the small room. The years of addressing hostile committees, of negotiating with warlords, of commanding rooms with nothing but the power of my conviction. It all came flooding back. "You listen to me," I said, my voice low but vibrating with an intensity that made him take a half step back. "My name is Dr. Adanna Okoro. I hold a Ph.D. in international law from the London School of Economics. I am a senior diplomat for the United Nations, and you are holding me illegally. You have violated the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, to which this country is a signatory. You have insulted my person, my profession, and my country." I took a step forward, my eyes locked on his. "You have had 3 hours. You have my phone. On it, you will find the direct line to Sir Jonathan Albright, the permanent undersecretary at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. I suggest you pick it up now, or the diplomatic incident you have single-handedly created will be on the front page of every major newspaper tomorrow, with your name, Officer Davis, featured prominently." The room was silent. The color had drained from his face. The bluff of the powerful is a fragile thing. It shatters when faced with the quiet, unyielding force of the truth. He stammered something, turned, and almost ran from the room, taking my phone with him. 15 minutes later, the door opened again. This time, it was a different man. Older, impeccably dressed in a suit, his face a mask of controlled panic. Behind him stood a mortified Officer Davis, who couldn't meet my eyes. "Ambassador Okoro," the suited man said, his voice slick with apology. "I am Mr. Hemsworth, the Chief Border Force Officer for this terminal. There has been a catastrophic error in judgment. On behalf of Her Majesty's government, I extend our most profound and sincere apologies." I said nothing. I simply looked at him, then at Davis. Hemsworth followed my gaze. "Officer Davis has been suspended, pending a full investigation. We have verified your credentials with the UN and the FCO. Your belongings will be returned to you immediately. We have arranged for you to be escorted to the first-class lounge, with our compliments." I slowly gathered my composure, smoothing down my wrinkled clothes. I walked over to the table where my things were scattered. I picked up my UN ID, my diplomatic passport, and placed them carefully in my bag. Then I turned to Officer Davis. "Your suspicion of me," I said, my voice calm but carrying the weight of the 3 hours I had endured, "was not based on a malfunctioning chip. It was based on the color of my skin. You looked at me and saw a stereotype. You saw a narrative of lack of criminality. You did not see a person. That is the real crime that happened in this room today." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. My report in Geneva tomorrow is on the systemic racial biases that undermine international cooperation and human dignity. I said, looking back at both men, "Thank you, Officer Davis, for providing me with such a powerful, first-hand case study. I will be sure to include it." The walk out of that room was the longest and shortest of my life. The air of the public terminal felt like a baptism. I was Adanna Okoro again, but the story doesn't end at the airport. 3 months later, I was in my office in Geneva when a request for a meeting came through. It was from the UK Border Force. They were implementing a new mandatory racial bias and de-escalation training program for all their officers. They wanted a consultant. They wanted me. I took the meeting. I sat across from a panel of senior officials, including a still chastened Mr. Hemsworth. They laid out their proposal, their PowerPoint slides filled with words like inclusion and sensitivity. When they finished, I spoke. I will not be a token blackface to legitimize your public relations campaign. I said, if you are serious about change, you don't need a consultant. You need a revolution from within. I counterproposed. I would help them design the training, but it would not be a general seminar. It would be an immersive experience. We would use virtual reality to simulate the border experience from the perspective of a black businesswoman, a Muslim student, a Jamaican grandmother. We would make their officers feel the slow burn of humiliation, the powerlessness, the dehumanizing gaze. An inaugural session, I insisted, would be led by me. I would stand in a room full of border officers and tell them my story, not as a victim, but as an expert witness to their failure. They agreed. The first session was tense. A room of 50 officers, their arms crossed, their faces a wall of skepticism. I saw a few officer devices in the crowd. I told them my story. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I simply narrated in precise, painful detail the 3 hours in that room. I described the smell, the light, the tone of voice, the casual destruction of a person's sense of self. Then I opened the floor. One officer, a younger man, raised his hand. With all due respect, Ambassador, Officer Davis was just following protocol. The chip was faulty. I smiled. It was the question I had been waiting for. The protocol, I said, is a tool, but the officer wields it. Why was a faulty chip a common technical glitch, interpreted as evidence of my criminality? Why was my offer to provide verification ignored? Why was my designer dress seen as proof of a scam rather than my professional success? The protocol didn't make those assumptions. Officer Davis did, and his assumptions were filtered through a lens of racial bias. I looked around the room, making eye contact with as many as I could. You hold immense power. You are the face of this nation to millions. You decide in a matter of seconds who is legitimate and who is not, who is a guest and who is a threat. That power demands more than just following protocol. It demands wisdom. It demands humanity. It demands that you see the person standing in front of you, not the stereotype in your head. The room was silent. I couldn't change every mind in that room, but I planted a seed. I forced them to look at the border not just as a line on a map, but as a place where human dignity is either honored or extinguished. As I left the building, I thought of my grandfather. He fought for the right to be seen as an equal on the global stage. My battle is different, but the war is the same. It's the war for the right to be seen, truly seen, for who we are, not for color of our skin or the passport we hold, but for the content of our character, the power of our minds, and the unassailable dignity of our humanity. They detain the diplomat, but in doing so, they unleash an advocate. And an advocate with a story is the most powerful force for change in the world. Like this story? Subscribe for more powerful dramas about overcoming injustice and building success against all odds. Hit the bell to never miss a video. What would you do in Ms. Okoro's position? Comment below.